Hey guys, Ritzy Roy here, and I want to really help out with the Steve problem going on right now. So I took action and I decided to go. This was hard, but I went to Discord servers and I just grinded out the Steve matchup for like 2 weeks straight. And I'm not like an expert at the matchup, but I do think I have a lot more insight on it than I used to. And I want to share my experiences, my findings with you guys, so you can take these 2 weeks of experience and suffering and use them for yourself. I wouldn't say it's horrible, but the beginning was pain. I'll say that. So there are 3 important things you need to know about Steve. These are like 3, I guess, aspects of the character that matter. The first aspect of him is the fact that he is not like a traditional zoner in the sense of once you get in his face, he'll just want to use get off me options. I think Steve is actually really strong when you're in his, if you get in his face the wrong way. He actually wants you to come to him. And it's not like a zoner like they want to keep you back so they can keep doing damage. No, Steve ultimately wants you to get in his face, and he wants you to get in his face the wrong way so he can rack up a lot of percentage on you. So I guess kind of like a trapper, but not exactly. The second aspect of Steve is that when he's in the air or being juggled, he is in a weaker state than he would be on the ground, because while in the air, he has to use resources and materials for his disadvantaged state, which means this stops his progression towards diamond. It gets rid of his availability of minecart and a bunch of other things, because he will need minecart and anvil to get down, which that's good. You're depleting his resources. If you can keep him juggled in the air, the longer you keep him juggled in the air, the more resources you can deplete from him, and also the further you can set him back from getting diamond. And then the third thing, which is really important to understand about Steve, this is the thing that I think kind of makes or breaks the matchup for you, is that Steve is almost like a League of Legends character, and how he has or RPG character, and how he has like a early game, a mid game, and a late game. He obviously gets he's the weakest at early game. He gets a slight power spike at he gets like a power spike at mid game where he's like decently better, and that late game he's a god tier broken character that definitely rivals Arsene Joker. So I'm gonna describe and how to deal with Steve in the 3 sections of early, mid, and late game, because some things change about him and some things stay consistent. The things that stay consistent are the fact that he will always be losing resources when he's in the air, and no matter how much tools or diamonds or what he gets, he'll never improve his approach game. Steve can't ever fix his approach game. That's what's super important about this character. He can fix every other weakness he has. He can fix his recovery and all that, but Broski still can't move forward no matter how many diamonds he gets. I mean, he can move forward, but he'll be worse at doing it than you 9 times out of 10. Okay, so let's talk about early game. Early game is we hear 3, 2, 1, go, and the Steve runs away from you and he starts mining. Pretend I'm mining. It's really rough mining, but pretend my Roy is mining right now and I'm getting resources. Actually, this would be more useful if I played Steve himself. So he's going to get his resources after here 3, 2, 1, go, and typically there will be a wall built. Now the way you are going to want to start the match against Steve is kind of dependent on who you're playing, but generally speaking, you don't want to start the matchup against Steve running at him, because as you'll see once we get into the match, Steve is looking at the bottom left UI right there. Steve starts off with materials, and these mats will allow him to do minecart, which leads to high damaging combos, or he has a burst of anvil, and he can also do up smash and all these really good tools. So what I'm saying is, in early game, he starts out with ways to delete you, and all of these ways to delete you are all geared towards defense. So he starts out with all of his defensive tools intact. He just doesn't have too much of his offense good yet. He gets his offense later. So in early game, Steve, I would say by all means, is sort of a zoner because he only has defensive tools and he doesn't have anything really offensively based. And up close, his damage output's good, but it's not going to usually beat out your characters, so you can somewhat afford to gamble with him more, but you don't want to run at him stupidly and try to force yourself onto him, because the main point of this character is he's kind of like Samus, and he sort of thrives off you trying to get in on him and hard punishing you for it. He's like Samus if Samus had a really stupid combo game, I guess, and limit. So that's early game. You're going to look out for minecart, which is really good. In early game, minecart will not be powered up. It'll be more reactable, so it's not as good. Anvil, he can jump off it and use it to cancel his Endlight, which is really good. And he will set up walls. Behind these walls, he's going to be looking for up tilt and up smash. And mainly, you're going to either tear him down with your aerials, or you're going to try to like feint an approach with like a short hop or something. So early game, he's not strong, and he's mainly going to want to turtle and defend out against you because his offense is negative. Now, once he gets to mid game, it's right about when his mats look like this. He doesn't have diamond or gold yet, or he might have gold, like a little bit of it, but yeah, this right here, I'll say this mid game. So I got an iron sword, so I got good damage. This is the point in time where
we've got new ways to.
This is the point in time where I'm going to do significantly more damage than well, Steve's going to do significantly more damage than most characters who are fighting are going to do it. So here, you are not going to want to, I guess, run at him stupidly like earlier, but now it's even more imperative you don't run at him stupidly. However, a huge difference between this and early game is now he has access to powered up minecart, meaning that most Steves at this point in time will sometimes choose to stop mining as much, and they'll start using minecart and they'll start casting their resources. Steves will be more reluctant to cast their resources early game because they want to build them up, but mid game they usually have some decent stuff to cast out, and they can either, you know, start going for minecart, which they can get mid game. They can 0 to death you. They can easily get 0 to deaths and really broken options they need to look out for, or they can start like looking to get to late game, which is where Steve's at his best. So in mid game, again, here's the power spike. Minecart's a real issue now. Anvil is going to be really abundant. He mines faster too, so keep that in mind. When he's running away from you, he's actually getting materials faster and more efficiently too, because it's because his tools are going to be better, and he'll do more damage. And on top of that, he will also be safer on shield, so he'll start to play more like a swordy and less like someone who's running away from you. He doesn't need to turtle as much because as his tools get better, so does his frame advantage on shield and stuff get. So that's really important to keep in mind at mid game. Mid game's like obviously it's a mid ground between early and late game. Now once he gets to late game, this is when he gets, let me get his diamond real quick. So this is when he has diamonds, usually has like a lot of mats, and by this point in time, either you or the Steve most likely would have had percent put on you if you're not like hard camping him. But once it gets to late game, this is the thing that, depending on who you are, you want to try to avoid. If you're a zoner, late game is scary, but it's not that scary because, like I mentioned earlier, Steve can never fix his approach game, so your game plan if you're a zoner doesn't change. You're just going to keep trying to abuse his bad approach game, look out for minecart, and just don't get out camped by Steve. At this point in time, most Steves will try to approach you more because you can't really get the yield of diamonds without really getting close to people. So at this point in time, this is when Steves start approaching you or trying to close the distance so they can 0 to death you. For that reason, you don't want to offer yourself up on a silver platter. This goes for both zoners and attackers, and you generally want to proceed with caution and play defensively here because the Steve, just know, like almost always, the Steve is going to want to get closer to you because they got diamonds. They know they can just instantly kill you, and they know the risk reward is skewed so heavily in their favor that like it doesn't matter if they mess up. So in late game, the counterplay besides defense is going to mainly be trying to juggle them and get them to waste their resources or get them off stage, because when they are not on the ground, Steves are using resources, and that is sending them away from late game. You can like kind of get them to deplete some of their late game goodies they had built up if you get them to use a lot of their resources, which mainly Steves have to use their resources in neutral or when being juggled. So if you can get them to use their resources, you can somewhat lower the advantage of late game, which again you do that by either camping them because they need to use resources or approach, or juggling them. What you don't want to do is you do not want to overextend because their combo potential on you is way better than like pretty much anyone's damage potential in this game. They're like, I think their DPS is probably second to Kazuya, to be honest with you. They, once they get diamonds, they're pretty much like a god tier character. So that basically covers the main stages they can be in. Now I just want to go over some real quickly, and that is the different counter picks you can use against Steve. So if you look at the Steve's matchups are made by Yanni, you'll see that Cloud and Sephiroth beat Steve really hard. Now I don't recommend picking up a Cloud or Sephiroth. You can if you want for the match for Steve, just because these two characters are really squishy when fighting Steve, and Steve is actually really capable of exploiting their weaknesses. They beat Steve because their advantage state and neutral are really good against him. Big swords and really big hitboxes are things that Steve hates. However, he also is really capable of cheesing them. But in the case of Cloud, he wins the matchup because on top of having a really big sword like Aegis do, he can charge limit, which just makes it so like early game, you have another option. Like most other characters in early game, they have to either tear down walls or something like that. Cloud can go for limit, he can fake limit charging, he has Blade Beam, which sometimes can beat out Minecart. Like he has stuff he can do in early game. And on top of that, Cloud's sword is spectacular for tearing down walls, and he's really fast, so he can threaten approach options. And also, he's really good at being on anvil. However, Cloud's recovery sometimes gets completely bodied by Steve because Steve is super good at edgeguarding Cloud. Now, Sephiroth is the other -2 matchup that I wouldn't recommend picking up for Steve unless you were committed, because Sephiroth in general is a kind of a precise character that takes commitment. But he wins the matchup because he has basically like a Cloud sword gimmick where like it's really big and it's amazing at tearing down walls, but his problem is, he's super duper squishy, and sometimes he just gets hit once and dies. That's literally this whole matchup. Like, you can tear down his walls, you can get past anvil and do all that stuff really good, but Sephiroth is very squishy, he's super light, and sometimes you just die to one, like, iron combo, so that's how I would recommend picking him up. Personally, I would recommend either getting a Sora, even though Sora is kind of specialized. Sora is just really good at edgeguarding Steve, and the way you beat him isn't too hard. And also, Steve kind of struggles with comboing Sora, or a Byleth, because Byleth isn't too hard to pick up, and they also do counter Steve. They're basically like a bootleg Sephiroth, like Sephiroth that has less ups and downs. They're more consistent than Sephiroth, but they won't have as many high. Their spikes won't be as high as Sephiroth, if that makes sense. Because Sephiroth, when he's doing good against Steve, he is completely destroying Steve. But when he's doing bad against Steve, he is getting completely dunked on by Steve. Another character you can probably pick up for them is Aegis. They don't take too long to pick up, and they basically are like a bootleg Cloud. And you have all the benefits of Cloud, except you won't have limit. That's what I would say. In general, they're not bootleg Cloud, but in this matchup, they're going to be like they're going to have the same gimmicks of Cloud, just without limit. So that's it. Hopefully this helps you out. These are my findings from grinding out against Steve. Good luck and get Steve in brackets. I know he's a really annoying character to fight. This is Ritzy Roy signing out.